was there.
I knew that.
I'm going yay. The year, the 7th day, and I was saying, knows everything.
You know what I need? A sugar mama.
Okay.
Shavuot.
It's a full day. I want to. That's good.
Freaking acai bowl.
All right, we're going to go to lunch at 1 o'clock. We're going to come back at 2:30, so we've got about a half hour to cram this shit down your throats. So, again, we are in the I2 portion of the Killer Influence training, which is, again, what separates CPI from Killer Influence is the inclusion of all of these other areas of study that enhance and allow us to deliver an even more powerful verbal or linguistic presentation. The information that I'm going to share with you is derived from a multitude of sources, both civilian and military. So I will give you a comprehensive list of where I pulled this shit from. First book you might want to start with is Left of Bang.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay.
Left of Bang.
Is that on your reading list, Seth?
If it isn't, it should be.
I'm sure that
Now, one of the things that when we talk about body language, we're talking about a very, very deep well. So one of the first things that has to happen is we need to find a way to simplify what we're doing. We need to distill a massive body of knowledge to a few simple guidelines, to a few big outliers that are a continuum that of poles that information falls within, so that we can begin to extrapolate things. And that's where the magic's coming in. If you're going to do true kinesic work, you are going to spend literally hundreds of hours watching a video of one person. Okay, when you're talking about interrogator like CSI, you're talking about someone who's going to sit in an interrogation, they're going to videotape that interrogation, and they're going to rewind that video over and over and over again to establish a baseline, to establish deviance from the norm. That's not practical for us. We don't have that luxury. We don't have those resources. So we need to do what a lot of the military operators are trained to do in the field. Look for specific outliers, specific telltale marks. But then we also need to kind of civilize it a little bit. We need to be able to look at a person or a group of people and extrapolate certain things. So you're going to hear me pull things from the military side. You're going to hear me things from the dating and seduction side of things. Okay? Everything from Left of Bang to the Playboy Guide to Getting Girls. and all points in between, because it's all behavioral. So first of all, let's talk about two concepts you got to have when you're talking about body language. Actually, three. First one is no single trait means anything. No single behavior means anything. Period. Someone goes, this is the most common one people see. This doesn't mean shit. Doesn't matter if they could be cold, they could be afraid, they could be comfortable in this position. You can't look at a single body language feature or behavior and make an extrapolation. You have to look at the context. Remember, I keep coming back to an environment and context. Context is king. Over and over, you've got to look at the context. Okay? The next thing we got to talk about is we have to determine, so if no single trait means anything, what do we have to look for?
Clusters.
Clusters, groups of traits that appear together. Usually, there's a timeliness to it. Usually about 1 to 5 seconds either way.
Yeah.
Most people's language and speech will match up. When people are being intentionally deceptive, that timing is off. So you can always, like, if you, classic one is, you guys remember when Nixon was making his speech to the public and he says, "I am not a crook." Right? I'm parodying it, but that was the exact timing. "I am not a crook." That's out of time. That's an out of sequence movement. So many times, one of the things you'll see is what Jason Hansen calls the freeze. When people are very animated, very outgoing, and they go to lie, they freeze. They just stop. All their body mechanics change. Okay? So what we're looking for when we're looking at clusters is we're looking at least 2 to 3 things that change together consistently. consistently. But this doesn't help us until we have the third characteristic, which is called a baseline. A baseline is the norm. What's normal? What's normal? The problem with normal is it takes time to figure that out. Right? So whenever you approach someone, remember this is from your Proxemics chapter. Any penetration of a person's personal space causes stress. Deviations from the baseline become stronger the more stress reaches the system. So just the act of approaching somebody will cause them to deviate from their baseline. The only question is degree. Okay? Now, the heuristic that the military follows when they're assessing baselines, there's only 4 baselines. Everybody with me so far?
Yep.
Okay. I've never taught anybody this stuff, so this particular stuff, so I get good notes. Your baselines can be broken down of all the possible multitudes and variations. Your baselines can be broken down into one of 4 things. They are either dominant or submissive. They are either comfortable or uncomfortable. Each of them has some archetypal characteristics. What are some characteristics of a dominant personality?
Posture.
Posture? In what specifically?
Aggressive. Not aggressive, but confident, upright, taking up space.
Okay. Dominant people take up space. Vertically and horizontally. They also have a forward energy to them.
Yeah.
So forward and big. Forward and big. What about subordinate people? Submissive
Less
people?
space,
They take up less space.
more hidden.
More hidden?
Shrink back.
Possibly. That's more uncomfortable though.
Okay.
A submissive person will be forward but small. Get it? Dominant, submissive. Forward big, forward small. Those are your baselines. You look at somebody in relation to somebody else, who's bigger? Who's more forward? Who's more back? Who has more open, exposed areas? Person who has more open and exposed areas is comfortable. Person who covers up their vital spots is uncomfortable. Who is looking for a way to protect their vital spots is uncomfortable. Can I use you, Elizabeth? Sit. Okay. So, who's more comfortable, her or me?
She's,
Why?
She's open, you're protected.
Barrier.
oh yeah.
When you see this, uncomfortable. Comfortable. You can draw a straight line between our vital spots. In the martial arts, we have this thing called the center line. And we in one of the Kempo studies that I trained in, we called the thing called the constructive center. The constructive center was the space between the eyes all the way down the front of the body where all the vital organs are accessible. When you look at somebody's orientation and they have clear lines of access to that constructive center, they're comfortable. Follow me? If they are blocking, they're not. They're defensive. You'll see this at bars all the time. People go up, they sit next to each other, right? And as they become more comfortable, they open up.
Yep.
Right? 4 possible baselines that you can scan a group. Dominant, submissive. If I'm being dominant,
Yep.
right?
Stop.
Right? right? If she's being submissive, right? In other words, she's not, and not in an afraid way, but you see that I saw this a lot when you guys were doing your 3 magic questions, especially this one. She was like all touchy and she was like all forward and right. Yeah, I was watching you guys, right? That's submissive or subordinate, right? And it can fluctuate, but this is the whole point. When somebody's dominant, the person, the submissive will be forward if they're comfortable. Forward and small. Forward and big. Understand? If they're uncomfortable, they're going to distance or block. Got it? Okay? So we're going to work on that part first. We're going to do role plays, and all I want you to do is get into groups of 5. Okay? And I want you guys to just get in a group, decide who's going to be the rapport leader. And I want you to just take on various body language postures, and if someone's going to go out of the room, they're going to change, and I just want you to pick who's what.
Oh, great.
You know, I want you to practice this. All right? This is the first thing I want you to learn how to do from a distance. Okay? Let's take 25, 30 minutes to, well, we'll take until lunch to do this, and then you can go to lunch and do it with people. And when we come back, we'll show you the 7 stages of intimacy.
You mean the mating dance?
You'll get it after lunch.
No, I'm not coming back after.
You're not coming back after lunch. You can go, there's a video on YouTube where I teach it. It's called the mating dance.
Oh, okay.
Something else about like it works great in bars. You're a tall dude, so it works even better for you. But so you got a bar, right? And all the dudes are sitting at the bar, right? You notice how they're all sitting like this, right?
If you're leaving and you need to talk to Stephanie, she's leaving for 1 o'clock for lunch too, so you might want to say hi, goodbye, whatever.
Okay.
Everybody else is sitting.
Everything that he has. There's nothing left to buy.
You're
I have all the things.
Trust me.
There's always more.
Ask me how I know.
It works. As simple as that.
All right, you guys need to pick a spot?
Yeah, let's just do it over there. So one of us leaves and then the